with toxic parents, dealing with toxic parents. And really, what you're going to get out of this episode is not only dealing with toxic parents, but dealing with difficult people in your life, especially people of authority, but really anyone that you interact with that is difficult. Of course, it's extra, I don't know, it's an extra sensitive thing for people who have parents who are very difficult or who are selfish or who are narcissistic. I'm going to describe what I mean by toxic parents because I don't like to call people toxic. They're using toxic behaviors or using behaviors that are not uplifting of their children. And it's not, maybe not all the time, but a lot of the time, even if it's a little bit, if parents are using behaviors that are selfish or that are demeaning or that are bullying of their children, it is going to affect the child. I'm probably speaking, the people watching this are not parents worrying about how they're acting, but they're more the adult children whose parents have been very difficult and they've had some trouble. I don't know, trouble. They had the parents had some trouble parenting and putting their kids first. So let's talk about that. What do I mean when I say difficult parents or parents that are not what you would hope parents to be? Just unconditionally loving, someone who lifts up their children, puts them first, takes care of them, makes them feel like they belong, sees them for who they are, advocates for them, right? These are the things that you would expect parents to do. Take care of basic needs, but much, much more than that. Take care of the hearts, stimulate them, like help them have potential to live in the world happy and centered and, I don't know, giving and kind, right? Grounded. This is what we hope parents to be. But there's a lot of parents, a lot of you out there have had parents who weren't perfect, and nobody is perfect at all. And there's no expectation that people are perfect. But some parents use behaviors or engage in behaviors that really hurt their kids. And if you have had that experience growing up, I see you. This episode is for you. It's to help you break some of the things that might still be affecting your life now because you can. No matter what you went through when you were young, and we know these things follow us our whole life. But there is things that we could do about it. There is ways we could heal, and people do move out of the huge negative consequences of living like that. Like we wouldn't invite anyone to live like that. We don't say, "Oh, just because you live like that, then you have all this great stuff or these great skills." Yes, you actually learned a lot of skills in keeping yourself safe and surviving and keeping people calm and dealing with people. And there's so many skills that you do learn when you have a difficult childhood, but that doesn't mean it's okay because those consequences of trauma are also there. And though they feel like they're pervasive and they will last forever, they do not have to. People do heal from trauma when they understand it, when they make meaning out of it, and when they make half memories whole. So, in the episode today, what I'm saying is there's hope. There is hope. No matter what you've experienced, people do come out on the other side. It might feel like really hard work or it might feel impossible, but it does happen. So find somebody, get help, and walk you through that process. So today we're going to be talking to Tammy, and Tammy's going to tell us a little bit about her experience growing up with her parents who were really difficult. I'll let her say that. I mean, I'm trying not to label people so you could see how I'm being maybe extra kind and nice. Uh, these people have done things, and there's so many clients that I have, and their parents have done things that are unforgivable, unnecessary. It's and I love these people so much, my clients, and it's so sad that they experienced what they experienced. So sad. Gosh, I have so many stories, but man, it breaks your heart. It breaks your heart. So we're going to hear from Tammy, and Tammy's healed a lot from her experience, but there's still some consequences that are still there. So why don't we bring Tammy on? You could unmute yourself. And hello.
Hi, Jodi. How are you?
Good. Thank you so
Thanks.
much for coming on and sharing your story. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what some of your experience or some examples, just so we could kind of get an idea?
Sure. I'm the oldest of four children, so my role was always one of caretaker as a child. By the time I
Mm.
was 12, I was doing all of the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, and the
Wow.
caretaking for my younger siblings, including when I was
12.
12. I was 12 by the time that happened. And then I would receive consequences depending on how pleased my parents were with what I made for dinner or how quickly I got things done.
Were
Um,
they ever pleased?
Not really. I remember distinctly. I'd get a 95 on a test, and the question was, "What happened to the other 5 points? You didn't do
Hmm.
that well enough."
Hmm.
So overachievement became a huge part of my personality
Hmm.
through the years. And that was from both my parents. Mom and dad had different ways of expressing it, but there was a constant feeling of you're on your own, and that I was responsible not only physically, but emotionally, and even in my teenage years, financially. So as soon as I was able to work, I was bringing money into the family. And even when I went to college, I was sending money home. So it was definitely a different kind of role. Um,
Then you see most kids today.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and some people would call that a parentified child doing all of that. Actually, I just saw a title of an article recently about when kids are taking care of so many things when they're just too young to be doing that.
I agree. I see so much of that. And now that I work with children, it's definitely a huge red flag for me when I see children that are fawning or trying to, the kids who sit at the adult table versus playing with the other kids or trying to caretake and trying to manage other people's emotions. That's always a huge red flag for me.
Let's talk about that because that is one of the biggest consequences when you are raised by people with narcissistic tendencies, with selfishness, with bullying behaviors, is
Mhm.
that the child attempts to manage other people's emotions. Of course, the other people, the abusers, are actually using that child to manage their emotions. When they're dysregulated, they try to get power over somebody to try to help them regulate, and the child learns what they could do to make that process easier and calm the parent down. Is that something that you experienced?
Absolutely. That I from the youngest age I can remember that. I do
Mm.
remember my mother was 25 when she had me, so she turned 30 when I was 5, and I remember she had quite an episode crying, locked herself in her room, got very upset. And being 5, I didn't understand that. I was still in that, birthdays are happy and they should be great celebrations. So I remember when I was turning 6, I thought, in the way that I would have to manage my mother's emotions, I would have to mirror her emotions often uh, in order to act acceptably. So I remember waking up on my 6th birthday and thinking, well, this is going to be a real bummer because I'm going to have to go in my room and cry. And I
Hmm.
did, and I got in a lot of trouble for it. How
Mm.
dare I do that because there was other family present. Um, and that's when I started to learn what was acceptable behavior in front of my parents in isolation versus in public or with other family members around. So there were so many different rules that the hypervigilance was maddening sometimes trying to keep up.
So managing people's emotions that you
Hmm.
carried past your childhood,
Absolutely.
and you're seeing you're working a school and you're seeing kids, you could see that pattern happening with other families,
Yes.
and then hypervigilance. So
Yeah.
hypervigilance is when you're very aware of everything going on around you and you're very aware of other people and their behavior patterns. And you have to be hyper aware of other people's behavior patterns because if it shifts, it could mean danger. And that's why children who grow up in chaotic houses or with insecurity or with abusers, they are hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
Is that your experience? I just wanted to explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that you hit it right on the head. And also when the energy shifts, that's when my anxiety goes up. Whether
And
it's
that's when you go into trying to be over responsible for other people's emotions.
absolutely,
So
I
then
have,
you're responsible when you see a shift, you're responsible to pacify that if you possibly can, or sway it, or quell
yes,
it, or something, right?
it's yes, and it's a constant. I have to remind myself sometimes that I'm not responsible for taking
Hmm.
care of certain people or certain situations, because I could very easily fall into that pattern of behavior. So I try really hard to learning boundaries was a huge process.
That is a huge, but that is another consequence I would like to share with everybody is that when parents are abusive, they don't want you to have boundaries, right? So they've groomed
Yeah.
you your whole life to not have that boundaries are bad and they will get you in trouble. They'll get you abused. Do not have boundaries with me. And so kids who grow up in these households don't have boundaries. They think boundaries means a rejection. And really, boundaries are about keeping people safe. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah. That, and I think I still, even though it's much healthier for me, I think there are still times when I might think about it more than someone else of, is this appropriate? Is this not? Where should I lie in this situation? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so you've brought up so many different consequences of growing up when your parents first of all give you too much responsibility that you don't deserve, and then criticize you constantly about it.
Yeah.
Um, and then have so much emotions that you have to then be over responsible for. So we talked about being over responsible, we talked about not having boundaries, we talked about regulating other people's emotions,
Hmm.
we talked about hypervigilance. Yeah,
Yes.
any more that we didn't mention?
Um, I
People
think,
pleasing? I guess though that goes
yeah,
with
I think
taking over
people,
responsibility. I guess that's a similar thing.
it definitely is. And I think kind of weighing, negative feelings that someone might have versus positive feelings. So a
Mhm.
lot of times if I hear even one small criticism, it can feel a lot bigger than it probably should a lot of times. So I really have to
Mhm.
use a lot of perspective taking to try
Yeah.
to balance those things out. Or if someone seems upset with me, it can feel catastrophic if I'm feeling especially stressed out. So I really have to weigh that. And I tend to want to talk about it. What did you mean by that? What can I do to fix the problem? Whereas sometimes people are just upset. It's very hard for me to just let someone be upset and not feel like I have to do something to fix that.
Yeah. It does sound like that you've done a lot of work
Yeah.
to be aware of these patterns and have integrated some ways to break the patterns. Could you talk a little bit about some of the work that you did that helped you?
Hmm. Yeah. It was interesting because I was in my adulthood when I finally made the decision that whatever my parents thought was not going to matter.
Mm.
So whether it was a
How did you
good,
get there though? That how did you
how
get
did I
that
get
probably was
there? I
because they taught you your whole life that what they think matters more than anything else, you know?
Absolutely. And it was very
So
difficult. It
dialed
was
in.
almost feeling like I knew I either had to break away from my family or I was going to have to break my way of thinking about what happened within the family. And by
Mhm.
that point my children were attached to them because even though they were really awful parents, they were somewhat decent grandparents. And I didn't want to take that away from my children. So I started to just decide that No matter what they said, it wasn't going to hurt if it was bad, and it wasn't going to feel good if it was a good comment.
Mhm.
And that took practice. That wasn't just I made a decision and then
Yeah.
it was.
I'm so glad that you said that because I think a lot of people think that they make a decision and then when it doesn't work out, they think that they failed or they didn't do work. I'm glad you
Mhm.
said that it took practice because yes, it is not just a decision and we can make these decisions all the time to let go. But these are patterns that in very informative years were set. And so to be kind enough with yourself to be like, I have to practice this. And every time you see it coming up, you have to practice again to be letting it go. I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, I have things that I will say to myself. I'll say, this is not a love thing.
Mm,
So I just say that to myself. This is not a love thing. And I also say, I can't control what someone else feels. I can't control what they feel. So I just try to stop myself and take a breath and get my vagus nerve under control.
mm.
Um, and it was very, very helpful. I will say though that my parents had a very negative reaction when I started practicing this. It was not it wasn't an easy process. It was very, very difficult for them when they realized that what they were saying to me wasn't affecting me any longer.
Yeah,
So
you had boundaries. They didn't like it. They did not like it.
it was hard. It
I
was
love that what
really,
you said is it's not a love thing. Did you have other people supporting you in your life? Because if you were isolated, that would be even harder.
when I was younger, I had a great aunt who was with me until I was about 9 years old. And she was just able to make such an amazing impression on me that I think I got a lot of my early coping skills that I didn't even know were coping skills yet from her. I've been so fortunate to surround myself with chosen family along the way and really good, supportive
Mm.
people, especially women. So I definitely draw a lot of energy from them and then try to give it back as well.
So when you say it's not a love thing, you've known love from your aunt and then
Yeah,
these incredible women that you've surrounded yourself with. So
correct.
so it's like you have something to compare. Like this is not the same category.
Yes. And then, but having my own children, that was a game changer for me. So I was very aware from the minute I was expecting, really, that this was going to be a different
Mm.
process and a different road for them than it had been for me. So I worked really, really hard to make sure that I was not in that parentification mode with them, that I wasn't doing those things. Um, and that I was making sure that they were being raised with boundaries and healthy attitudes. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. You know, a lot of people think that people who are abused then continue to abuse, but there is a percent, and maybe it's higher than the general population, but it's still less than the people who have been abused and break that chain. Do you know what I mean? So say like,
absolutely.
and we don't ever think about that. So if they say, well, 18% of people have been abuse further. Well, what about that other 82%? Wait, did I do the math right? Something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What about the other 82% who say, I'm doing it differently? I see that and I don't want to do that anymore.
And
82% of people stop that legacy. And I just think that's amazing when so much attention is on people who abuse again. No.
right. I think people get this idea that that's the only pattern and when you're a child in an abusive situation, speaking from my experience, I was acutely aware that I was being abused. I was acutely aware
Mm.
that my upbringing was not like other kids.
How did you know that?
The way they would act, the way that other kids would
Oh.
react to things, I didn't have that reaction at all. And I thought, what's different here? And I also knew that my parents would act very, very differently in front of like extended family and friends,
And then
or
you had the aunt that was different.
yes. And then I had her that was very helpful. But I do remember being in high school and being ready to go off, and I really wanted to go into working with kids because I wanted to help the kids like me that I
Oh.
knew, um, kind of kind of fall through the cracks. They're functional, but things aren't great. And I remember a guidance counselor saying to me, "You know that you can't work with kids because you're going to be an abuser."
Oh,
And I
I'm
remember
so glad I
thinking,
brought that up because I didn't know
yeah,
that happened to you.
that did. And I remember
Ah,
thinking, wow, I can't live here. I can't live in this town because they're going
ah,
to automatically label me as an abuser because it's a small town and people knew it eventually comes out, what was really happening in the home. And so I literally left on my 18th birthday, and I haven't lived there since. But I was so aware of myself, so definitely keeping myself in check, because when you have adults telling you, well, you're going to be an abuser, like, whoa, wait, what do you mean? So this is just what my life will be? And it hasn't been at all. It's been the opposite.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about how it's still affecting you now.
Sure.
When we were texting before about tonight, you were thinking about relationships and how it's affecting your dating life.
Definitely. I was married once. I was married for 17 years, and ended up with someone who was pretty abusive. There was a lot of domestic violence and control, and I think I had carried a lot of the way I had pleased my parents into that marriage.
Mm,
So a couple of things have happened from that. First, I don't really trust that people truly like me or love me. It's very hard for me to do that. Um, but on the other hand, I also tend to give people the benefit of the doubt for too long.
mm,
So I've had to kind of set up rules for myself that once I start to see it and feel it, whether it's there or not, I have to move on, um, which has been a healthier way to deal with it than staying and saying, well, maybe I'm not being a good enough
mm,
girlfriend or wife or whatever. But saying, nope, let's really put this on paper. What am I doing? Let's be really radically honest with myself of what my behavior looks like. And can I control this or can't I? Did I deserve this reaction or don't I? Um, and that's been
and hardly ever.
helpful.
You
Yeah.
deserve a reaction that's inappropriate. So I'm just saying that because you know, I know the dating world out there, but this is what I tell young women, that when you start dating somebody, when you just start and are getting to know somebody, a lot of them go into that thinking, okay, am I worthy of him? Does he like me? Does he like me? Or he, she, them.
Yes.
And really, you're looking at, is this person worth my time? Like, that's the question.
I'm so glad you said that because I've really turned it around, and it's made dating a very different game of saying, do I approve of him? Do I think that he'll fit into my life?
Yes.
I think
That's the
in a,
question. Is if you're
yeah,
so worried about how they like you, you're not really assessing if they're a good person or not.
agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
And being able to stop a situation before it gets too involved, that then I've had a negative response to it. So I do. And I also always think, what will this person be like in a crisis? What will this person be like when someone dies? What will they be like if they get in a car accident? What do I think their reaction will be? So I tend to ask a lot of different questions. Like, I really don't care if they like pizza and I like pizza. I care about, so tell me, what was one of the losses you've had and how did you deal with it? So asking deeper questions, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking and seeing how they treat other people.
Correct.
Like
Absolutely.
even the server at the restaurant, or a
Absolutely.
clerk a cashier or something. Like, how do they treat people How do they treat their family members? How do they treat people who are strangers and friends? That
Hmm.
that's really a brilliant change around to thinking like, does he like me? And am I doing something wrong if he doesn't?
Yeah, I don't even
And
go there
instead,
anymore.
it's like, no, it's the question is this person worth my time? Is this person worth another hour of my time? That's it. That's all you're committing to, like each time,
Yeah,
until
I'll
you really
just
get to know the person.
like, was that worth the amount of mascara I put on tonight or not? If it didn't feel that way, no.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
you know what? I've had some friends in the past, and then when they're like mad and they don't care, and they maybe have no makeup on and they answer the door and they're like, "What do you want?" They're just like don't like that's when the person ends up showing up. And
Yes.
we just heard a story recently about somebody who went on a first date and the person just came from mowing the lawn because they were like, "I've been on a bunch of terrible dates." And I didn't even I wanted to meet you before I even like tried to see to kind of eliminate um that whole process and make sure that this person's real, and that's the one that worked out.
Yeah,
It doesn't always have to work out in that sense, but if the person passes that test, they pass that test,
I
right?
agree.
It's like, I'm here to see if you're worthy of my time. And it really turns the whole dating thing on its head. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, is it worth like dating?" You have to expect that there's a lot of people that is not going to work out.
Yeah, I
People
also
you have
think
to
about
expect that.
it's like a job. You only need one. You only need one job. You only need one person.
I know,
So,
but you have to go through a lot of weeds.
you know, I
You have to kiss a lot of frogs or go through a lot of weeds, and you have to, find the right person. You need a bigger pool. And with online dating, the pool is big, but you have to go through each one separately. It's not like you're doing stuff in a group and like someone stands out as who you have a crush on. We don't have that kind of lifestyle anymore where
no.
we're in big groups of people.
No, and I think I've just learned to limit the amount of time. Once I start to see flags or once I just realize that there's not going to be a compatibility, I'm
Goodbye.
no longer afraid to just say thank you, good luck and truly mean it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything you feel like you want extra help on? Because it feels like you are really in your process, in your healing process. That doesn't mean everything's perfect. I'm sure you have bad days and things are difficult, but is there anything that I could help you with at all?
I
Maybe if I can.
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes I just have the hardest time trusting my own
Mm.
choices still. Um And it can be silly things like, should I get the red one or the blue one? Oh my gosh. And I think I put too much on that. And it can be, I doubt myself in places I shouldn't doubt myself.
Is
And
that because it doesn't matter as much and so it matters more?
like
Like
somehow,
if it's something that was really mattered and it was clear, there's
yeah.
not a problem because you make decisions probably all day. We all do as
Hmm.
humans. And so there's some that stick you. And are you describing mostly the ones that stick you or things that don't necessarily matter, but they
Yeah,
symbolize to you that you can't trust yourself, even though it's like you're good with the important stuff.
I'm
Are
good with
you?
the important stuff. I'm bad with um, should I really buy this thing for the house or should I really wear that dress? I don't know. I don't know if that really looks good on me. And I think it's like that still hearing that criticism in the back of my mind.
But
Um,
isn't it interesting, Tammy, that it is attaching to things that matter less?
yes.
And like we're looking at the big picture of your life and your healing journey, the fact that it only could attach to this because you really haven't had motivation to be like, I need to get rid of this. This is like too important because these things aren't as important. But for some reason, they're attached to this narrative that you can't trust yourself.
Yeah. And
And
that I
so we need to
and
change that meaning.
yeah, and I think also sometimes I don't feel like I should hold space. So I really have to work on those situations where I'm feeling like I really don't belong here. I really shouldn't be taking up space in this space. Why am I feeling like that? Like, what is it? So I'm trying to wrap my head around those
But
situations.
do you think they always have meaning, or do you think those are just old pattern thoughts or
I
old negative thoughts
I think you're right. I think
that
my
have no
brain,
meaning? Like, so if you're like,
yeah,
I'm taking up space, I shouldn't be taking up space. Like, that is an old, probably from when you were little, like, take up no space so you're off anybody's radar so nobody gets mad at you, right?
exactly.
And
I
so there's some situations you're like, oh, I'm taking up space. And that feels like a trigger because in the past that was dangerous. But there's probably rarely a time now where it's literally dangerous.
Yeah, and one of my close friends said to me, "Your brain lies to you all the time."
Yeah. I mean, all of ours do. It's like a human thing. Our brain is like trying to solve problems to protect you when it doesn't need to. So this is one of those times where your brain is saying, if you take up space, someone will hurt you.
Exactly.
And you could respond to it in a couple ways. One is like, why do I feel that? What is going on now that's triggered that feeling? That's
Mhm.
It's okay, but sometimes it's nonsensical that it just comes. Right?
Yes.
You can if you did that, see, I heard when you were talking about it that you did that and then you were really trying to find what is the problem. Like there was like
Yes.
that is like a problem to solve. Like there was a problem, that's why I feel this way. I got to figure it out. But sometimes there might be a problem because there might be you feel someone's negative energy and you're like get out of this space, like right, you have that gut feeling like get out of here for your own safety. But you were talking about the shame of like I'm taking up space and I don't deserve to is the feeling. It
Yeah.
still might be because there's a negative person around you, or it just might be kind of a random like worry because your brain is on overdrive and has nothing else to worry about, so it's going to bring one of these old worries. It's like a negative thought, like an intrusive thought, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
And if it was an intrusive thought, if we could tell the difference, and if it was an intrusive thought, then you're like, oh, there's one of those thoughts again. Have a seat. Right now, I'm busy.
Yeah.
That you don't have to figure anything out because it's not a problem, right? It's just an
Mhm.
intrusive thought.
Mhm. Yeah, and trying to figure out when that's happening, that's hard for me to like put that to the side. I feel like I go into that, "Oh wait, I have to take care of you right now. You came and you're being intrusive and I don't want you to get really big. So I'm going to try to figure you out right now." And sometimes I can get in my head about that. So,
Yes. So that's going to be a practice when you're aware of it to practice like the gut. You might be able to have this relationship with your gut that you ask, like, am I in danger? Uh-huh or uh-uh. Like uh-huh or uh-huh right away. It's like uh-huh or uh-uh. And so if your gut is saying I'm in danger, then you could be like, who's out here and do I have to leave this situation because there's somebody, getting upset over there and I just don't want to be around that energy.
yeah.
So it could be a situation like that, but sometimes if it's like, you're not in danger, you're like in the library, everything's quiet, it seems really fine. I don't know what, like your amygdala has an emotional memory and it could be a smell of a book that was like a smell of a book in your house. It could be like so subtle and you
Mhm.
would never make the connection of why this trigger came up. And so you're trying to solve a problem. It's like you just smelled something that you smell from your childhood. You might not even be aware of it, but the amygdala is an emotional memory. So it would trigger it before
Yeah,
your prefrontal cortex gets involved. So there is no problem. Do you know what I mean? It could be
ab-
so little.
absolutely.
So what this is an invitation to practice when you're feeling like that. I'm taking up space. Ask your gut, am I in danger? Uh-huh or uh-uh.
Okay.
And because you're probably never doing something wrong, you're never like actually being selfish in a situation, like it's just not you, right? So that
Right.
I will eliminate that off the top. But if you're like, am I in danger? Uh-huh or uh-uh. And if you are in danger, you're like, okay, where's the exit? I'm gonna leave. I don't need to stay here anymore. I'm eating in my car. But if
Mhm.
it's then you practice. It's a practice, just like that practice. Like, is this is not a love thing. Say your thing that you say. This is not a love thing. And then bring something out. Your mind wants to solve problems. Give it something else. Be like, oh, I'll go over here and clean this drawer out. You know,
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
practice, and you've done it before. You could do it with this, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds really good.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure you helped tons and tons of people.
I hope so.
Because the people feel so alone going through that. And
There's
that,
so much shame of around it, and I really want to break that.
yeah, none of this had anything to do with you.
No.
Um, okay. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you were here. Please comment below if you want to share your story, or you want to express anything to Tammy. That would be great. You could do that under the video. I would love it. And I'm on live every Monday at 8 p.m. I am off in the summer, July and August, but I'll have last show in the end of June. And I'll see you. I'll still put up videos, so still subscribe, because I'm going to still put up videos all summer on my YouTube channel anyway. So bye, Tammy. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you benefited from the time. I know I did.
Thanks, Jodi. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you.